Welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Jake Ziegler. I'm here with Brad Garoon. On Never Did It, we take a look back at the last 100 years of movie history in an effort to fill in some of our own movie blind spots. Today, we're covering a very famous year in cinema history. We're covering the year 1939, which I know, at least at some points, has been discussed as one of the greatest years of like a Hollywood golden era because of the quality and
iconic status of the film.
Perseverance. I was thinking of like staying power. Been a lot of movies of high quality with staying power, that still get talked about a lot today because it was such a big year and there were so many interesting and acclaimed films from this year. We've decided to cover not two but three films from this year. We found one that neither of us had seen that was really worth talking about. So let's start with that one. Actually, want to start with Stagecoach, the one that neither of us had seen?
Totally. So I was thinking about building a top 5 for 39. I'd already seen two movies in 1939, one of them being The Wizard of Oz and the other being Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So I'm watching Stagecoach as just like a way to build an archive. By the way, I didn't end up getting to 5, so I just have these 4.
Neither did I. Me too. I have the 4.
Yeah. And I was like, holy crap, this movie's amazing. Do you want to watch this instead of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington? I'm happy to shift this to be my movie. And Jake's like, no, I want to watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, so let's do both. So Stagecoach. This is the movie that made John Wayne famous, and it is about a stagecoach. So you've got a group of people in a town. Some of them are being sort of kicked out of the town because they don't fit in with the character of the town. You've got a drunken doctor. You've got a woman of the night who they never say out loud what she does for a living. They never see why everyone's being so mean to her.
Yeah.
Then you've got one of the people leaving town is this woman who wants to be reunited with her husband, who's an officer in the military. This is post-Civil War South. I think they're in, or West rather. They're in Arizona.
Yep.
Or the Arizona Territory. I don't know what that makes up. And they're being told that Geronimo and the Apache are ready to attack. So she wants to be with her husband. This gambler, played by Kill Bill's dad, is...
Robert Carradine?
Yeah, right. No, it's John Carradine, not Robert Carradine.
Oh, John. Okay.
He wants to accompany her. And then you have the stagecoach driver, who's the sheriff, I want to say, or maybe a U.S. Marshal, and his bumbling driver friend, who's just he's so funny. So this ragtag group decides to head out from one town to another so they can all get to where they're going. Oh, and a whiskey salesman as well.
He's important. Yeah.
He's from You Can't Take It With You. He always plays like the same character.
Yeah. He's got a look,
Yeah, he's played by Donald Meek is the whiskey guy. Thomas Mitchell is the drunken doctor. And we should say the names of these folks because these are big names. John Carradine is the gambler. Louis Platt is the woman who wants to get back to her husband. And anyway, along the way, they pick up the Ringo Kid, played by John Wayne, who he's on the lam. He escaped prison.
Yes, he escaped prison. He's a fugitive.
Because he wants to avenge the death of his brother.
At least, yeah, it was definitely his brother.
Okay, so he wants to avenge the death of his brother by this gang, and he gets picked up by the stagecoach, and he hears that this gang is in the same town that everyone's going to. So he jumps in. It's real crowded in this stagecoach.
It was like, that was a nightmare for me. Like, that was actually hard for me. I was like, this would be the worst thing. I mean, like, in that bumpy ass stagecoach, like, with like 7 people in there, like, absolutely not. I'd rather walk.
Right, and Doc Boone smells bad. You just know it. So what's really cool is this is a movie from 1939 about class. We didn't say that at the top. John Ford directed this movie.
Kind of important, yeah.
And what you tend to realize is that this guy who seems like when you see him, with his eye patch and just being grumpy and looking like an ornery old man, was actually interested in the issues of the day. When we talked about The Searchers, like, this movie is not just racist. It is about racism.
Mm-hmm.
This movie isn't just classist. It is about class issues, like this prostitute who can't catch a break from anyone around her, or this fugitive who is the most honorable man in the bunch, or this alcoholic who saves the day. All these people who are outcast from society are the ones who are doing the hard work that needs to be done to make sure that people can deliver their babies, get the stagecoach from one place to another, intimidate gangsters who are going to try to hurt their friends. I was blown away by it.
I don't know if you can tell, but like, I'm actually getting just thinking about the power of this movie. Like, it was kind of overwhelmed me, and all these things that you're talking about. Yeah, where you have these people that are like literally being cast aside by everyone. And like I said, they're doing all these heroic things. Like when, Doc Mitchell is kind of not quite as bumbling as the other stagecoach driver, but he is, kind of presented as obviously, well, a lot of them, they're presented as like in this misfit character, like, he's a terrible doctor, we'd never go to him. But then when it, comes time to deliver the surprise baby, he drinks a gallon of coffee and, gets water thrown on his face for a while, and he goes in and he saves the day, and it's a great moment. Like I said, you've got John Wayne, who we've talked about him before, like when we did the Searchers and everything. Like personally, of course, like he grew to embody a lot of hateful things and was not great. But like in this movie, like the character that he's playing, is such a sensitive, interesting character. I don't think, like I said, I don't think he knows maybe that if she's a sex worker or not, or does he know?
I think they're wrong-footing you and being like, oh, when he finds out she's a sex worker, he's gonna toss her aside. The storyline in the movie is he's attracted to her and no one tells him what she does for work, but he just notices that everyone's mean to her, so he's extra nice to her. And then he thinks he's going to die because he's going to fight these gangsters,
and there's three of them to his one. There's like one he wants to kill, but then that one has like two other brothers. You go after one, you're going after all three.
So he doesn't think he can live. No one thinks he can live. And even if he lives, he's going back to jail anyway. He has this plot of land and he offers it to her to live with him because he's pie in the sky. And he's trying to convince her that she won't be alone there. And I think the movie is wrong-footing you into thinking he doesn't know. But then as soon as she shows him, he's not surprised. I think he knows the whole time, and what we're supposed to take from it is like he's kind to her because he loves her, not because of a misinterpretation of who she is. Like she does take care of the baby right after she's born. She is kind to everyone in the Stagecoach, even though they don't want to like share water with her.
She offers to help the pregnant lady right away, and she's always offering to help and do things. She's nicer than any of the rest of them.
It's a real, I think, Mary Magdalene analog, quite deliberately meant to evoke John Wayne as sort of a Jesus figure, and this woman is Mary Magdalene.
Sure. Yeah, I could definitely. I don't think that's far-fetched at all.
Incredible stuff. And then just amazing performances all around. Like we mentioned this actual misfit character, the bumbling sidekick who's driving the stagecoach, just as the actual funniest thing in every single situation. And then you mentioned Thomas Mitchell is not, he proves himself to be both brave and competent, but a blistering alcoholic. But he's also very funny throughout most of the movie. Now, granted, if you have issues with alcoholism in your family or yourself, this might offend you. I mean, he's a real comic relief for 80% of the movie. But then he nuts up and like does the important stuff at the end. He's great. It's much different than I was thinking about 3:10 to Yuma. You had the comic relief character in that movie who then is used as fodder to make the villain look more scary. And you don't have that in this movie. And Jake, I forgot about the action. Oh my God.
Unbelievable for that time period. It's unreal.
So there's a scene where they're the climactic scene where they're running away from the Apache in the middle of this plane, and John Wayne has to jump. I don't know if it's actually John Wayne's stunt double has to jump from horse to horse on the stagecoach to unpin it, and an Apache warrior falls and goes under the stagecoach. I'm almost positive that Corridor Crew, which is a very cool channel on YouTube that mostly talks about special effects, computer effects in movies, talked about this and determined that there was no way to do that except for someone to do it for real and just hope they didn't get trampled by the horses.
They don't do that today.
You couldn't make a move. You'd lose all your money trying to ensure. Let's see. While the chase sequence in Stagecoach is absolutely stacked with jaw-dropping stunt work, one moment eclipses all others. An Apache, played by a white man in red face, vaults from his own horse onto the Stagecoach team, straddling the lead two horses while regaining his senses after his daring leap. The man is shot, and his body steadily falls between the galloping horses, his arms grasping at straps and hitches until he smacks into the ground. He holds onto the yoke for dear life, his feet dragging between the galloping hooves until his grip slips. And before you can blink, in one continuous shot, he lets go and all six horses drive straight over him. This is 1939, so unless Ford had a time machine that's not CGI, and the continuity of the shot, which concludes with the man rolling over in pain or in shock, makes it clear it's not a puppet. How do they pull it off? A guy named Yakima Canutt just did it in one take.
How did they do it? They just did it.
It's wild. Honestly, it's a shame that it is 85 years later and we're just now getting the stunt Oscar, because that guy deserved it.
Just a quick interlude. He actually did get an honorary one in 1967.
Oh my God.
And if we can just touch on the red face thing for a minute. I mean, my wife is, indigenous, so like I'm very sensitive to this in the house. But in this case, maybe there was only one guy willing and able to do this actual stunt. I mean, I can't see there being a lot of people lining up to do that one. So
it's so incredible. He deserves all the credit. Anything else on Stagecoach? Was this nominated for any Oscars?
Oh yeah, all these movies were big Oscar movies. We should probably just do it at the end because there's so much for all three of them.
Okay, cool. Then I recommended for you Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. This was the real one, not the one that I saw and was like, holy crap, that's so good. This was one that I watched during the pandemic. You ended up liking it much more than I did, which is a pretty rare never did it thing. So Jimmy Stewart plays a senator who is put in that position by a goofy governor who thinks he'll be easy to manipulate because there is a scam going on in the state to purchase land for a dam, but really it's a graft so that politicians can line their pockets. Yeah. Politicians played by the incomparable and bizarrely wearing a white wig, Claude Rains, who's always great. Jimmy Stewart, the eponymous Mr. Smith, Senator Smith, wants the land for a camp for Boy Scouts. He's a Boy Scout leader. That's how the literal Boy Scout leader. Yeah. That's why they picked him, because they thought he was like this naive Boy Scout. He wants it for a camp for the Scouts, and he has an idea, a plan for how the money will be paid back too. It's a zero budget deficit plan. That's how pie in the sky this movie is. And of course, because of politics, his reputation is ruined almost immediately. He's considered a bumpkin by the press. He's slammed by his colleagues as someone who's taking advantage. They lie and say that he owned the land and he'll be getting money out of this deal as a way of discrediting him. And then the big centerpiece of the movie is this very famous filibuster scene that Cory Booker just finally broke the record of, actually.
Great timing, right? Like, I was really glad we watched this movie. Like, how did we know, like, to not do 1939, a year ago when we were doing this podcast? But it just, the timing was really special.
I mean, no one had ever done a 25-hour. At the time this movie was made, and for the next 85 years, no one broke the record of Senator Smith, including Strom Thurmond. Right. But now Cory Booker has broken that record. As a way of salvaging his reputation, really just had to convince one guy to...
His mentor, the guy he looks up to more than anyone in the world,
Right. And that's the movie. Also, there's a romance because it's a movie from the 30s. So, Jake, what did you think of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
5 stars. I love this movie. And it goes back to what we talked about in our last week's episode, 927. The earnestness of this movie is just completely off the charts. The Jimmy Stewart character, this is like, I think, the quintessential Jimmy Stewart character, along with, probably It's a Wonderful Life, but it's just, the hero, simple guy. Like you said, he's a Boy Scout, for crying out loud. Like, I mean, they couldn't get any more like Jimmy Stewart in this movie. It's such his quintessential role, I think. And it's the earnestness of it, which I really love, but there's also quite a bit of, I think, cynicism in the movie and with the system that he is fighting against. And I think there's kind of an interesting, kind of dynamic there.
It does imagine an America where there's only one party.
Right.
I mean, right? So that's a little weird. It's like, to not upset anyone, everyone is just a blanket political party.
Right. Which honestly in this case I think is okay, because that's not really what the movie's about. And I think that would have just maybe created some extra distraction. But he had to prove with his filibuster, he had to prove it to himself. And then, the one guy who he thought was like the greatest guy ever, he talks about, it's like, oh, he was friends with my dad, and we need more senators like him, and we need more people like him. And he looks up to this guy so much, and the guy sells him out, barely even thinking about it, and then continues to do so for a long time until he finally, of course, it's 1939, he sees the error of his ways, et cetera, et cetera. But it's it's heartbreaking for someone to like just to be betrayed by the person you looked up to the most. And I just think Jimmy Stewart is just incredible in this, and I think Claude Rains is incredible in it. And I love the filibuster scene, which I obviously knew about but had never seen. I love this stuff. I'm all in.
What did you think of Jean Arthur's performance as the very important to the plot romantic foe for Jimmy Stewart?
It was okay. That's not my main thing I love about the movie, but like you said, it's the product of the time. Every movie has to have something like that. So I don't think there was anything wrong with her, but yeah, it's certainly not the most memorable aspect of the film.
I think it's interesting that this is the year after You Can't Take It With You, which we've talked about, where she also starred with James Stewart, and these two don't have chemistry with each other.
Not so much. Yeah. Oh, we should mention too, this is also like You Can't Take It With You. This is a Frank Capra film.
Oh, so. And it reads like a Frank Capra film.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's quintessential Stewart, it's quintessential Capra. I mean, it's one of the most famous movies for either of them.
For sure, and it's like total schmaltz, which he was really into.
I mean, It Happened One Night is not super. It's a little schmaltzy, but a little much funnier than.
I was going to say, yeah, it gets by a lot on the fact that it's quite funny.
Yeah,
I think that's my favorite Capra film. Period.
I think it's mine too. Yeah,
I mean, I like It's a Wonderful Life, but it's not as good as It Happened One Night.
I've never seen it.
That's wild. It's quite good.
And I know, and I feel like maybe it's probably one that I did see like at some point, you in my younger years, but like as an adult, I don't feel like I've ever like sat down and watched it. And I feel like every year I'm like, this will be the year I watch it. I'm not avoiding it or anything. I just, season 2.
When we do Christmas movies, your
Yes.
arch nemesis of an
Yes.
episode. Capra has 7 movies in the United States National Film Registry.
Yeah, not bad.
And then the last movie that we covered for this week was Gone with the Wind, which took forever to watch. So tell me why you recommended Gone with the Wind.
Well, it's Gone with the Wind. And as we discussed before, the movies from 1939, obviously I had not seen Mr. Smith or Stagecoach, so the only other movie I had seen from 1939 was Wizard of Oz, which everyone has seen. I still think Wizard of Oz, I think, is like, they calculated somehow as like the most seen movie of all time or something, based on like, box office and TV ratings and whatever else. Like, more people have seen Wizard of Oz than like any other movie. That seems perfectly believable.
I totally buy that, yeah.
And it's great. I love Wizard of Oz. But so, I mean, literally, Gone with the Wind was my only choice, but I also feel like it would be a good one to talk about because it's, obviously very, very famous movie. Had a recent resurgence of, I don't know if popularity is the right word, but notoriety when it was taken off Max briefly, and everyone's like, oh my god, now we can never see Gone with the Wind again, despite the fact that you could like rent it or buy it from like any other digital. It wasn't like the movie disappeared or anything, but I think people made this huge deal out of it. Like, it was like, oh my god, now nobody can watch it, we're erasing history. The usual nonsense there.
We should say that it would have been bad by any metric for Gone with the Wind to disappear. Whether
Yes.
you think it's the best movie ever or the worst movie ever, we should not be erasing movies. Thank goodness Coyote versus Acme is coming out, and maybe that's the worst movie ever, but
Yep.
movies that got made should be seen.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, if the movie was disappearing, I would have joined in the course, but that's not what was happening. People were making a bigger deal out of it than it really was. That happened just a couple of years ago. But, and again, just for, this is a film podcast, you're a film guy. I think Gone with the Wind is one of those movies like your Vertigos or your Citizen Kanes. It's like, every serious film person should probably see it at some point. And now you can say that you've seen it.
Yeah. And honestly, I thought it was okay.
There's some really great things in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So my experience with it was interesting. I fired it up on Max, which it does exist on.
Yeah.
And it started with, because Max owns TCM, because Warner owns TCM. And it started with a film historian, a black film historian, talking about why the movie was famous, the fact that it was protested before it even came out because the book was seen as racist even at the time, or at least of glorifying the South, which people did not want in northern states. Sorry, I should specifically say glorifying the Confederacy. I don't think people really cared if southern states post-Confederate glorified. And that it's important to watch, just what we said, it's important to watch movies, to wrestle with movies, to wrestle with the history of film.
Mm-hmm. Certainly,
because it is the language of our history. And then then she went away, and then there was the exact same thing written on the screen. I was like, what is this for?
I watched it on Vudu, and they had like a similar, a written thing, but yeah, they didn't have like an introduction like on Max or anything. But right. I own it on Vudu, so I just watched that copy, that version.
And then as the movie began, I thought, wow, the opposition to this movie is really overblown. And then I got about a half hour in, and I thought, oh, maybe people are underestimating how racist this movie is.
Mm-hmm.
Both in terms of black people and Irish people.
Yeah.
This movie is mostly about Irish Americans, some of whom are such caricatures, it boggles the mind. The Thomas Mitchell case. So Thomas Mitchell features in every movie we've talked about today.
I love that.
He was the man. He played Doc Boone. He played a character named Diz in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And he plays Scarlett O'Hara's father in Gone with the Wind. And he's a leprechaun. It's wild. Yeah. He wears green in every single scene. He has a mental breakdown. He gets drunk all the time, and he falls off a horse and dies. It's crazy the way that his character is treated.
Yeah. The least of the Thomas Mitchell performances of the three.
Well, he's doing a lot. I don't know if it's good, but he's doing a lot. But yeah, the portrayal of the young black servant is, I think, indefensible. I think it's like 100% indefensible.
Yeah.
Hattie McDaniel won an Oscar for her portrayal of Mammy, which is very different to the portrayal of, I would say, the other two main black servants. The sort of, I wouldn't say dim-witted, but certainly slow-talking butler character. Mm-hmm. And then the younger, I forget her name, Prissy. Every time she spoke on screen, my skin crawled. It was wild what they did with that character. She's stupid. She's cowardly. She's a mess. And and like just the pitch of her voice is like meant to irritate.
Yeah.
But anyway, for those who don't know, the movie is about Scarlett O'Hara, who's kind of a bitch.
Kind of.
She's just like this nasty socialite who really wants to marry Ashley, this guy named Ashley.
That's a
yeah. And Ashley is too honor bound to marry someone as wild as Scarlett. So instead he marries his freaking cousin.
Yeah.
So gross. But his cousin's a very sweet lady, and no one could possibly hate her.
Mhm.
So Scarlett spends the movie trying to figure out ways to make Ashley jealous by marrying guys who will die. And then her house is burned down by Yankees and she has to escape in one of the coolest adventure scenes I've seen in any movie ever, really, the escape through the train yard.
That's amazing. Blew me away all over again.
Really incredible stuff. I mean, the explosions, it's really impressive
Yeah.
and scary if you care about Scarlett O'Hara. And in the
Yeah.
midst of all this backbiting, you've got Rhett Butler, who's played by Clark Gable. Also, who plays Scarlett O'Hara?
Vivian Leigh.
The incomparable Vivian Leigh.
The incomparable Vivian Leigh, yes.
She's really great. And Clark Gable also very good. They're putting in two very big performances in a sea of character actory performances, like people who know they're not the star of the show. Gable's great. He shows up and he is the one who has O'Hara's number, but she doesn't love him, but he just keeps popping back up and saving her, and then they eventually end up together and their lives are awful. That happens over the course of almost 4 hours. Do you like this movie?
Yes, in a sense. There are things about it I like. This was another one, again, I had ranked at 5 stars. I'm like, nope, that's wrong. Like, that's just, I don't know what I was thinking there. But I did put it down to 4 stars. One thing I do like, and this has nothing to do with, like, the content of the movie at all, but, like, with these older movies, and we saw this again with The Brutalist this year, I love turning on a movie and having like a 3-minute overture or something, and then having like a little intermission in it, and then like even like the exit music. Like I kind of love that sort of thing about it. So again, nothing to do with the movie, but I just think that's a neat thing to have, and does help longer movies go by a little faster. But I mean, I think the movie like looks incredible. I mean, obviously every set, is immaculate. The costumes are, the one guy, he wears green all the time, like you said. But I mean, these, costumes are just, really opulent and extravagant. And, I love all of that. Technicolor, I'm a sucker for like Technicolor. I love the way it looks still. The escape sequence is incredible. Like all the fires and the burn, like just the backdrops of it and everything. And I think like as a product of its time, like I can, if you kind of put yourself into the time, I can see why this movie got, so popular. People love the romance in it, but holy crap, there's a lot of like tragedy in this movie too, and I didn't remember all of that as much, like with the miscarriage when she falls down the stairs, and then like her daughter dies the same way her dad died. There's just all of this in there too. I was like, gosh. So on one hand I can see how it became popular, but then on the other hand I'm like, what was the appeal of some of this stuff? So I don't know if I like the movie so much more, is that like I'm still like kind of fascinated by it and impressed by a lot of it. Also worth mentioning, the director of this, Victor Fleming, is also the credited director of Wizard of Oz. To have your name on those two movies in the same year is pretty noteworthy.
Now, why did you say the credited director of Wizard of Oz?
It's either the Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind, where there was some controversy.
Okay. That's what. So he is the actual director of Wizard of Oz. He is the credited director of Gone with the Wind.
There we go. Yeah.
He is the director of Gone with the Wind. But before production began, there was a lot of difficulty. They fired 2 directors, or they fired their original director. They brought someone in. I forget who the other 2 are, for like a week. And then he was gone. And then Fleming came in and actually was the on-set director and took the movie to release.
Mm.
But he wasn't the pre-production director.
That's right. I knew there was some sort of something there.
It happened here. So it's interesting. Gone with the Wind is basically a 5-act movie. It's so long. There's this intermission, which is really like the end of a movie. She decides to take her home back because land is the most important thing to an Irish person, which I think totally tracks with like the Irish national language. Mm-hmm. But that's a perfectly fine ending to a movie, with her being like, I'm going to rebuild Tara Moore. Or no, just Tara. Sorry, Tara Moore is a bar by where I work. Oh, yeah. I'm going to rebuild Tara and I'll never be hungry again. Like, that's a good ending to a movie. But then there's 2 more acts. I think the 5th act of this movie is, I mean, you said this, it's mean. I think it is cruel to the audience, to the point of almost self-parody. When the daughter dies, I said out loud, "You're kidding me." Like, I was on my exercise bike and that happened. I'm like, "You're joking. That's not what happened in this movie." It is. And that was, like you said, after a miscarriage, and then it leads to her being, I mean, the movie ends with her being left at her front door by her husband and saying, "I'll get him back because I loved him the whole time." Liar. No, you didn't. And also the death of her sister, and, it's all, or not her sister, her friend, I guess, cousin. I actually don't know how they're related.
Olivia de Havilland's character.
Yeah. But it's just so cruel. That left me with kind of a sour taste in my mouth. It's also like something happens every 5 minutes in the last 40 minutes of the movie, and that is not the pace of the movie leading up to that point. Not that it should be. It's just very stark. Like, I remember thinking when I fired up, because I watched it in 4 installments I do 50 minutes on the bike every morning.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I had my last 50 minutes. I'm like, whoa, this feels different. This feels like Rise of Skywalker, where that whole movie felt like, can you take an Adderall and chill out for a minute? And that's how the last 50 minutes or 40 minutes of Gone with the Wind felt too.
Yeah.
Not so much to its detriment. I mean, you want a big finale. Ugh, man. What a weird movie.
Yeah.
I gave it 3 stars. I think it's a hell of an achievement, but I will absolutely never watch it again.
Mhm. I've probably got. I might have to watch it because I know my wife still wants to watch it. I did watch it without her this time, and then hopefully my kid at some point gets involved into movies enough where like it would make sense to show it to her at some point. But
my wife's already seen it. My father-in-law doesn't like it. I just don't see a universe where I watch Gone with the Wind for a second time.
It's a tough one. Like I said, I probably wouldn't watch it again on my own just for like fun or anything. But if like I said, I had a compelling reason to, like my wife finally wants to see it because she's getting, more into film history and stuff. She's got a kind of this list of movies where she's not like super interested in seeing them, but she kind of wants to be able to kind of Gone with the Wind is one of those, and like Goodfellas is another one that she's not super. It's like, it seems like such a guy movie. Like, well, it is, but it's, still Scorsese. It's still Goodfellas,
There's a whole chunk where it's narrated by a lady.
Yeah, Lorraine Bracco. Karen.
Let's talk about the Oscars.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Here, I have that pulled up. Gone with the Wind won 8 awards out of 13 nominations. Stagecoach won 2 out of 7. And then Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I think, just won 1, but that was nominated for 11.
What about The Wizard of Oz?
Wizard of Oz was nominated for a total of 6.
And all 4 of them were nominated for Best Picture?
Yep.
What was the 5th movie?
There were 10 nominees that year. So Best Picture was Gone with the Wind, a movie called Dark Victory, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, which was another pretty famous movie from that year, Love Affair, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Ninotchka, Of Mice and Men, Stagecoach, Wizard of Oz, and then William Wyler's version of Wuthering Heights.
Oh, wow. Lots of stuff. Yeah. Lots of like good, famous, like you said, really persevering movies.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah. So it was a good Best Picture slate that year. Of course, Gone with the Wind was the winner, which in retrospect doesn't make much sense, but I mean, at the time, I can see how that would be the case.
Totally. Mm-hmm. And then where do these 3 movies land on your list of movies from the 1930s?
If I were doing them just by 1939, I mean, I would have Gone with the Wind 4, probably Wizard of Oz 3, Mr. Smith at 2, and Stagecoach at number 1.
I would do it the same. I would just switch Wizard of Oz and Mr. Smith.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's legit. That's a tough, because like I said, I love Wizard of Oz.
I've got Stagecoach at number 2 of the 1930s, right after Make Way for Tomorrow and right before Modern Times and The Holiday. Or it's just Holiday. It's not called The Holiday, the Cary Grant movie. And Katharine Hepburn. Great movie. And then right behind Holiday, I've got Mr. Smith Goes to Washington at number 5, which is right before M, which we also covered on this podcast, the Fritz Lang movie. And then I've got Gone with the Wind all the way down at number 24, just after The Life of Emile Zola and just before The Bride of Frankenstein.
Gosh, I've got about 27 films on my list. And
Same. I don't have Wizard of Oz because it's been a while since I've watched it.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely one of the ones I have on there. So I have Gone with the Wind at number 17 on that list. It's just ahead of Bringing Up Baby and just behind The Thin Man. For Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I have that all the way up at number 5.
Me too.
It is just behind Make Way for Tomorrow and just ahead of King Kong. Stagecoach has unseated Modern Times as my number 1 film of the 1930s.
Our top 5 is very similar. I have mine goes Make Way for Tomorrow, Stagecoach, Modern Times, Holiday, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yep, yeah, mine is Stagecoach, Modern Times, M, Make Way for Tomorrow, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
And I've got M at number 6, so there you go.
Nice.
And then The Lady Vanishes. I just want to watch all these movies again. The 1930s had so many good movies.
There's and I mean, looking at 1939, I'm looking at the Oscar list here still too. And I mean, I know Oscars aren't always the bellwether, but I mean, here we've got, I don't know, William Wyler's Wuthering Heights is supposed to be great. Goodbye, Mr. Chips is very famous. The Of Mice and Men from that year is supposed to be great. There's Love Affair with Irene Dunn. Ninotchka is supposed to be a great one too. I mean, there's just there's a lot of great movies here.
All right, so this is crazy, but we only have 1 movie from each decade left. Well, technically, that's not true because we have no movies left from the 2010s, but we have 2 movies left from the 2020s. Sorry, I keep saying movies, but we have 2 years left from the 2020s because we have 2020 and 2024 still to do, our season finale. So we'll be back next week with films from the year 1975.